Salutations, surrendering soldiers of the Siegfried. Ribecourt, France, fall 1918. It is late in the war. As winter draws in, the Germans fortify their lines and dare the enemy to come to them. Waves of infantry die, crashing against German concrete. The maps do not change. Heavily armed and well protected, the British Mark V is a fearsome war machine. It clears trenches, it destroys barbed wire. The tank can break through. On October 17, British forces prepare for a mass assault on the town of Cambrai. With tank support, Allied command believes a breakthrough is a certainty, but the Mark V has one major flaw: it is not reliable. It's Automatic for Automatic Games. Thanks for joining me for this, the first of a 4-part series entitled Through Mud and Blood.
Edward.
Sir.
Townsend. Come on, you miss all the fun.
Oh, we need a fresh batch of salts over here. This lad's got 20. All artillery! Fire!
I've been looking at your papers.
Don't worry about me, sir. I'm ready to do my bit for king and country.
Listen, son, you find forward and reverse when you're told you'll do all right for me. Grab those, would you? Come and meet Big Bess. Woman of your dreams. And our new driver, boys.
Whoa, no, don't swear. She does not like it when you swear. Finch. You've done this before.
Done what before?
Mind your business with manners. Listen, don't worry. She'll look after you, yeah?
All right, boys. This is the big one. Our orders are to punch through the German line, destroying artillery positions as we go. Finch.
Yes, sir.
After that, we'll advance on the French town of Cambrai, where I have been assured there is wine, women, and song. So you should enjoy that.
Ah, my man is wine. Jesus. Are we in safe hands or what, boys?
All right, my boys. Remember, boys, do your jobs, take care of each other. Big Bess will take care of you.
May the Lord have mercy on our souls.
We'll get through this together, right, Edwards?
Right, sir.
Full ahead, driver!
The Black Bess's tank commander, a man by the name of Townsend, makes reference to Cambrai, and ultimately that's our goal, Cambrai. In the opening sequence, they say we're setting out on October 17th, but the battle for Cambrai was all wrapped up by October 11th. So if we were to reach there now, we would only find victorious Canadian troops. In fact, I kind of doubt that there would be this intensive of fighting in this area, especially around Ribecourt. But nonetheless, that's what DICE proposes. And maybe I'm wrong, and if you know better, please let me know in the comments section. Overhead, we see bombers coming in. The infantry has gone over the top. There's artillery involved and just shy of 350 tanks. So this is nothing short of combined arms warfare. And the Allies would utilize this all-arms warfare to great effect during the 100 Days Offensive, the closing chapter of the Great War. Meanwhile, the Germans, they're putting up rear guards, they're in retreat, sometimes just a full rout. This fighting that would lead up to the Battle of Cambrai, for the Allies it would yield around 12,000 casualties, and for the Central Powers, around 10,000. Although I shouldn't call them the Central Powers, because at this point in the war, Germany's allies have pretty much capitulated.
Field gun is down!
Now, if one were to look up the Battle of Cambrai, 1918, they would realize that it references very specific fighting for the town of Cambrai itself.
Hold position here!
And it only speaks to about a 48-hour period in which the Canadians took 20 casualties or so.
The Brits don't give up unless we force them!
And this series will encompass 4 episodes, maybe 5.
One more down!
And I do not intend to spend all of those episodes talking about the 1918 Battle of Cambrai. But fortunately, for discussion's sake, there are 2 battles of Cambrai. The 1918 one, which is very specific to the fighting for the actual town itself, although we could discuss the battles that lead up to it, or the 1917 one. If you look up the Battle of Cambrai 1917, you realize that it discusses a much wider operation in scope, which includes a lot of villages west of Cambrai. It certainly includes Ribecourt, Havrincourt, Bourlon, Flaquier, Fontaine Notre Dame, and several more. And as kind of symptomatic of being a larger operation, the casualties involved are much higher. It's 45,000 casualties there and abouts for the Allies, and an equal number for the Germans. So, yeah, the casualty rates are, for both sides, are pretty much on par with one another. And the First Battle of Cambrai, 1917, it sparks off on November 20th. They utilize 460-some, 470-some tanks. This is the Allies, of course. And it, too, is an all-arms operation. Although, at this point in the war, 1917, this all-arms strategy is still in the testing phase. It's kind of a... The First Battle of Cambrai is kind of a petri dish for such a strategy. And it will produce favorable results for the Allies, especially on November 20th, November 21st, and November 22nd. But then it starts to peter out, a lot like the Kaiserschlacht does, where your supply lines become overextended, the coordination between the different arms, it just isn't as tight as it was when the thing sparked off, and for numerous other reasons. And 10 days after the battle starts, the Germans launch a counteroffensive, which is just devastating, and it undermines a lot of the achievements that the Allies succeeded in making in those opening days. But yeah, it's pretty much a testing area for that kind of warfare. Gotta make sure we take out these 77s. They can play hell on a Mark V.
Stay focused, boys.
Meanwhile, it seems like we're getting overtaken by these German foot soldiers, which certainly they have every capability of throwing anti-tank grenades at us, and we do not want that. Now, of course, this is the story of Daniel Edwards. Our commander is Townsend, and then the gunner is McManus. We have Finch and Pritchard. Technically, these guys... Oh. Well, there's an ugly-ass German tank if there ever was one, a Schnook. Which really, I believe, is an inferior tank to the Mark V in so many respects. Namely, its crew. The Germans would, they'd just pull from their general ranks to man the guns on a tank like that, a moving fortress, as it were. Whereas the Allies, they offered very specialized training to their gunners. Here comes an artillery barrage, and we're right in the thick of it, and yeah, we're not going anywhere. I dare say we're dead in the water.
You good? You sure?
With Finch being down, it is incumbent upon Edwards to get the Mark V back up and running. So we'll set about that. Meanwhile, Townsend keeps yelling at us from the interior. Alright, there we go. Yeah, we should be good to go. And indeed, we're rolling again. So let's talk more about 1917 and the officers in command. Certainly, Field Marshal Haig had a hand in the planning phase. Although many people charge that not enough planning went into the operation, as evidenced by the scant reserves allocated. Not enough to exploit any of the gains that the Allies would enjoy in the opening days of their attack on Cambrai, or at least in that sector. In the field, you had General Byng, Julian Byng. He's a veteran of Gallipoli, certainly one of the more level-headed officers involved at Gallipoli, although he was late to the show. He was definitely more competent than General Hamilton. And now he's back on the Western Front, and he's taken to this new armor and intends to utilize it at Cambrai to mixed results, really. And there's some serious setbacks in terms of the armor, which we'll get to a little bit later. On the other side of the equation, you have General Marwitz, who we discussed in the last video. He would gain notoriety for his counteroffensive. Not that it was altogether his. Certainly there were some subordinate officers that helped design the counteroffensive. And, you know, kind of a nod back to the Petri dish element, it would be an early example of them being the Germans utilizing stormtrooper tactics to great effect. But Marwitz, yeah, his reputation would grow because of the 1917 Battle of Cambrai. And in 1918, I believe Byng was in charge again. There's part of our target there, those artillery guns. That's quite an explosion. Just a segment of our ultimate target. There's more up ahead at our 12 o'clock now. So we'll engage those. Oh, and at our 11 o'clock there's a 77, so we'll throw her in reverse. And it's still in action. One would think that that massive explosion would have hampered the gunner of that 77, but that's one resilient Fritz. So yeah, the German counteroffensive at Cambrai, 1917, that was 10 days after the operation launched. And by that time, the operation had kind of stalled out for a variety of reasons. Was that all the artillery? Yes, it sure was. So now it's off to Willie's farm. Sounds good. Pick some vegetables. Really, we don't have time for that, but we will proceed to the farm. So why was Cambrai important? It was important because, like the previous two sectors discussed in the previous two videos, it was a railway hub. Germans were using it to bring up troops, guns, and supplies. Unfortunately for the Allies, to get to this railway hub, they would have to break through the Hindenburg Line, an unprecedented feat. However, on November 20th, the first day of the attack, they did just that. And that was much to the surprise of a lot of folks. Now, as you can imagine, part of the defensive aspects of the Hindenburg Line were just rows and rows of barbed wire. Certainly an impediment to infantry, but as you can see right here, when you're using tanks, not so much of an impediment now, is it? And different commanders had different doctrines that they would espouse in terms of armor. Someone like Byng would say, you know, pack your infantry close in behind your tanks, and once you break through, the infantry just pours out and starts taking on the Hindenburg Line proper. Whereas one of his subordinates, ultimately a Major General Harper, he encouraged his men to keep their distance from the tanks, basically saying that the tanks were like magnets for shells. And if you wanted to minimize your infantry casualties, you'd steer clear of them until they were done doing their business. That brings up a disturbing image. Sorry. Well, anyways, the result of this was that the tanks would be well ahead of the infantry. They'd create these holes in the barbed wire, and in the interim between the tank passing and the infantry arriving, the Germans would concentrate their guns on that new gap in their own barbed wire. So when the infantry did appear, they ran smack dab into a hail of bullets. And Harper has been treated harshly since the war, which I think is unfair. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback from the comfort of one's own living room and discuss the flaws and failures of somebody that was in the thick of battle. Nonetheless, historians are prone to do just that. Now up ahead, there's another schnook. I've not much more to say about them. I should point out that, if I haven't already, the Germans did not field very many tanks during World War I. Really only a handful when compared to the Allies, and though Battlefield 1 doesn't necessarily represent that well, you gotta give the Germans some tanks, for playability's sake. However, the Germans did seize tanks, and they did so notoriously at the Battle of Cambrai, because so many of them broke down. When they weren't breaking down, they ran into other problems, like, like there was a canal, and I think it was the St. Quentin Canal. Either way, there was a bridge near Marcoing on this canal, and the first tank in a column to approach this bridge, the name of the tank was the Flying Fox, it sets out onto this bridge, and the bridge just breaks. And so all the tanks behind the Flying Fox are pretty much screwed. And beyond that, I mean, just the Mark IVs were unreliable. As I said at the beginning of this video, the Mark Vs in many cases were unreliable. And I believe it was by day 2, half of the Allied tanks were pretty much out of service. Not all of them destroyed, some of them were. At Flaquier Ridge, 39 of these tanks were taken out by German gunners inside the village of Flaquier. Tons of villages involved around Cambrai, by the way. And that specific one that I just cited, that was just one of the intense points of the battle. Another one being Bourlon Woods. Initially passed up by the Allies, and then they turned to it. And just a scene of really intense fighting until the Germans finally withdrew from it.
Edwards, take us over.
But yeah, I wanted to discuss the 1917 battle, mainly because it's a blueprint for the last 100 days, that combined arms warfare. And yeah. But ultimately, you know, the Allied attack pretty much stalled out, and then on November 30th, General von der Marwitz launches his counteroffensive, which is devastating, and he takes back a lot of the land that the Allies had gained. And you end up with two salients. He gets one and the Allies get one, basically forming like an S in the battle lines.
traction, sir. I can't move her.
Come on! Come on, then!
Richard! Richard!
Are you out of your mind? You're gonna get us all killed! Edward's behind you!
Edwards! Release the pigeon! That is an order, son! Do you understand me?
Sir!
Releasing the courier pigeon, the passenger pigeon, with your own coordinates, calling in for artillery fire. That's damn near suicide, folks. And this particular portion of this level is surreal. Passenger pigeons, well, they used them for communication. A lot of them grew ill because of the fumes inside those tanks. Each tank was pretty much outfitted with 2 pigeons, but they suffered the side effects, as did the crew, of being inside those steel beasts. So yeah, I hope you understand why I spent so much time talking about the 1917 Battle of Cambrai as opposed to the 1918 one. Again, part of that is just because 1917's battle was just important. 1918's was too, but it was a lot more brief. And we've got a lot more content to come in this series. 3 more episodes.
Messenger pigeon! Incoming fire! Message coming! Orders! Sir, new fire mission. It's Townsend, sir. Sir. 3, 6, 4, turn!
Here it comes, boys. Nice serving with your lads.
I'm Automatic for Automatic Games. Thanks for watching, and if you like this,